When I first met Daniel, one of the things that drew me to him was how much we seemed to want the same things. We talked for hours about our dreams, traveling, building a home together, and most of all, raising a family. He would describe, with such tenderness, what kind of father he hoped to be. He'd say things like, "I can't wait to teach our kid how to ride a bike," or "I hope they have your smile." And I believed him. I never once doubted that he meant it, because back then, I think he truly did. We got married after 4 years of dating. Our wedding was beautiful, simple, full of laughter, surrounded by people who loved us. I remember thinking, as we danced under the lights that night, that we were at the start of something wonderful. That all of those dreams we had talked about were finally within reach. I felt safe, certain, and so deeply happy. For the first year, we focused on settling into married life. We moved into a small house on a quiet street, planted flowers in the yard, made plans for the future. We talked casually about when would be the right time to start trying for a baby. He always said soon, soon, love. Let's just enjoy this time together a little longer, and I understood. I wanted to enjoy it too. But in my heart, I was already picturing the nursery, already imagining the soft weight of a baby in my arms. But then, little by little, his answers began to change. When I brought it up, he'd deflect. "Work's just so stressful right now. Let's wait until we're a bit more financially stable. Let's take one more big trip before we have to worry about diapers and sleepless nights." At first, I agreed. I told myself he was right, there was no rush, we had time. But as the months turned into years, the excuses kept coming. And eventually, I began to sense that something deeper had shifted. One evening, after another gentle argument where I tried to raise the subject again, he finally admitted it. His voice was quiet, almost ashamed. "I don't think I want kids anymore," he said. "I'm sorry. I didn't plan to feel this way. I thought I did. But now I'm not so sure." And I can't lie to you, I remember staring at him, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear his words. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. We sat in silence for what felt like hours. My mind raced through every memory, every conversation where he had told me he wanted this too, every plan we had made together. I kept thinking, how did we get here? How could you change your mind about something so important, something we built our future on? But I didn't say those things. I just nodded, feeling tears slip down my face, because what was there to say? In the days that followed, I went through waves of sadness, anger, confusion. I questioned myself. Did I miss the signs? Did I pressure him somehow, make him feel trapped by the idea? But deep down, I knew this wasn't about blame. Sometimes people change. Sometimes they grow in different directions, even when they love each other. And I knew Daniel still loved me. That made it harder, in a way. Because love wasn't the issue. The issue was that this dream, the one I'd carried since I was young, the one I'd shared with him and believed was ours, it wasn't shared anymore. And that left me standing at a crossroads I hadn't expected. Do I stay, knowing that the future I longed for would never come? Do I leave and start over, heartbroken but true to myself? We tried for a while to find a middle ground. We went to counseling. We had long, tearful conversations late into the night. He even said, once, "If it means that much to you, maybe I can try." But I saw the fear in his eyes when he said it. And I couldn't do that to him, or to a child. I didn't want a reluctant father. I didn't want to bring a baby into the world hoping it would fix something broken between us. In the end, we made the hardest decision of our lives. We parted, not out of anger or betrayal, but because we owed it to ourselves to live honestly. I still love him, and I think part of me always will. But I also know I deserve the chance to have the family I dream of. And he deserves to live a life that feels right to him, without guilt or resentment. It's been a year since we said goodbye. Some days, the sadness hits me like a wave, unexpected and overwhelming. Other days, I feel hopeful, imagining that somewhere ahead, there's a future waiting for me that will feel whole again. I'm learning to let go, to trust that I'll find my way, even if the path looks different from what I once pictured. What I know now is this: love is not always enough. But honesty, kindness, and the courage to choose what's true, that's what helps us heal. That's what helps us begin again. The months after Daniel and I parted felt like wandering through a fog I didn't know how to clear. The house we'd shared felt too big, too quiet. I found myself avoiding certain rooms, the one we had talked about turning into a nursery, the kitchen where we'd spent mornings planning our future over coffee. I packed away reminders of our life together gently, not out of anger, but because it hurt too much to see them every day. The photos came down from the walls. The books and keepsakes we'd collected found their way into boxes I wasn't ready to open. It felt like saying goodbye twice, once to him, and once to the life we'd imagined. But in that quiet, I began to hear my own voice again. At first, it was hard to know what I even wanted. So much of my identity had been tied to us, to the dream of being a wife and mother, that I didn't know who I was outside of that. But slowly, gently, I started to rebuild. I spent more time with friends I'd drifted from during those intense years of marriage. I joined a local book club, signed up for yoga, and started volunteering at a community center on weekends. These weren't grand gestures, they didn't erase the ache, but they gave shape to my days. And they reminded me that there was more to me than the role I'd longed for. And then came the question I had been quietly avoiding: did I still want to be a mother? The answer, when I let myself feel it fully, was yes. Fiercely, deeply, unshakably yes. The dream hadn't left me, even if the person I'd planned to share it with had. But the path to that dream felt uncertain. Would I meet someone else? Could I build a family on my own? I didn't have the answers yet, but I knew I had to try. I owed that much to myself. I began exploring what that could look like. I spoke to a counselor who specialized in single parenthood and alternative paths to becoming a parent. I started researching adoption, foster care, and assisted reproductive options. Each possibility felt overwhelming at first, but also full of hope. It was as if a door I thought had closed forever was, in fact, still open, just leading to a different kind of future. There were moments of doubt, of course. Nights when I lay awake wondering if I was strong enough to do this on my own. Times when I missed Daniel so much it physically hurt, not because I regretted the choice we made, but because letting go of love is never easy. But with each step forward, the sadness loosened its grip, and the hope grew stronger. One spring morning, I visited a local agency to learn more about adoption. The woman who met with me had kind eyes and listened without judgment as I shared my story. She said something that stayed with me: families are made in many ways. What matters is love, not how the pieces come together. I left that meeting feeling lighter, as if I could finally see a way forward. As the years passed, I continued on this path. There were setbacks and delays, moments of frustration, but also moments of joy. The day my application was approved, the first time I was matched with a child, and when I finally held my son for the first time, when his small fingers curled around mine, I knew that every twist and turn, every heartbreak and detour, had led me to this exact moment. It wasn't the family I had once pictured. It was something even more extraordinary, because it was real, because it was ours, because it was built from resilience and hope. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I think of Daniel. I hope he found peace, that he built a life that feels right for him. I don't regret our time together. He taught me so much about love, about honesty, about the courage it takes to face hard truths. And I hope in some way, I helped him too. Now, when I look at my son's face, when I hear his laughter fill the house that once felt so empty, I feel grateful. Grateful for the journey, however painful it was. Grateful for the chance to become the mother I always hoped to be. Grateful for the reminder that sometimes, life's most beautiful chapters are the ones we never planned. Life as a single mother was both harder and more rewarding than I had ever imagined. The sleepless nights, the endless laundry, the constant balancing act between work and parenting, it tested every ounce of my strength. But there were moments, quiet and ordinary, that made it all worth it. The way my son's face lit up when I walked into the room, the sound of his laughter echoing through the house, the tiny hands that reached for mine. Those moments stitched up the cracks in my heart, reminding me why I had chosen this path. I found a rhythm, imperfect but steady. Friends who had stood by me grew even closer, their support a lifeline when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm. And though there were times when I felt utterly alone when doubts crept in, whispering that I couldn't do this, I reminded myself that love had brought me here. That love would carry me forward. Years went by, and with each birthday candle blown out, I saw my son grow into a curious, kind-hearted boy. School brought new challenges and joys. I cheered him on at soccer games, helped with homework, and tucked him in with stories every night. He was my greatest adventure, the living proof that dreams can take unexpected forms and still be beautiful. One day, unexpectedly, I heard from Daniel. It was a simple message, just a few words, but it stirred a mix of emotions I wasn't prepared for. He wanted to meet, to talk. Part of me hesitated, afraid of reopening old wounds. But another part, a part that had healed and grown, wanted to see him, to close the circle in a way that felt whole. When we met, yours had softened the edges of our past. We spoke honestly, without blame or regret. He told me about his life, about the struggles he faced, the lessons he learned. And I shared my journey, the heartbreak, the hope, the family I'd built on my own. There was sadness, yes, but also gratitude. For the love we had shared. For the courage it took to part ways. For the way those choices had led us both to where we were meant to be. We agreed to keep in touch, to be a part of each other's lives in a new way, friends who had once been lovers, linked by history and respect. And as I watched him walk away that day, I realized something important. Love doesn't always look like the fairy tales we grew up with. Sometimes, love is letting go. Sometimes, love is choosing happiness for the other person, even when it means your paths diverge. Looking back now, I don't regret any of it. Daniel and I were a chapter in each other's stories, and that chapter was full of truth. My story continues, written with the hands of a mother who found strength in loss and hope in new beginnings. And I know the pages still ahead will hold surprises, joy, challenges, love, and forms I can't yet imagine. Because that's life. Messy, unpredictable, painful, and beautiful all at once. And through it all, I'm learning to embrace it, one day at a time. As my son grew older, so did the challenges of parenting. There were moments of triumph: his first day of school, his first autumn math test, the time he stood up for a friend who was being bullied. And there were moments that tested my patience and strength: tantrums, teenage mood swings, the inevitable arguments over homework or curfews. But through it all, I learned that love isn't about perfection, it's about showing up, even when it's hard, and choosing connection over frustration. Sometimes, I caught myself thinking about how different my life would have been if Daniel and I had stayed together. Would our son have had two parents under the same roof? Would the journey have been smoother? But those thoughts never lasted long, because I knew the truth: the life I had built was real, and it was enough. My son had what mattered most: a mother who loved him fiercely, a home filled with laughter and safety, and the freedom to be himself. Along the way, I also found myself opening up to love again. It wasn't something I sought out, it came quietly, unexpectedly. A friendship that deepened, a connection that grew into something tender and true. My new partner wasn't Daniel, and that was okay. He brought a different kind of joy into my life, one that complemented the love I had for my son and the strength I had discovered in myself. Blending our lives wasn't always easy. There were moments of awkwardness, moments when my son tested the boundaries of this new relationship, moments when I worried if I was doing the right thing. But step by step, we found our rhythm. My partner never tried to replace Daniel. He honored the past while building something new with us. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. Looking back, I realized that the story of my family isn't a straight line. It's a winding path filled with detours, setbacks, and surprises. But it's mine, and it's beautiful in its imperfections. I've learned that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most meaningful growth. That love can change shape but still be real. That hope can survive heartbreak and bloom again. Most of all, I've learned to trust myself. To listen to my heart, even when it's scary. to believe that I am worthy of happiness, no matter how many times life shifts beneath my feet. And as I watch my son laugh with his new friends, as I hold my partner's hand on quiet evenings, I know that the future uncertain and unknown is full of promise. Because we carry our past with us, not as a burden, but as a foundation. And on that foundation, we build what comes next. As the years passed, my son blossomed into a thoughtful and resilient young man. Watching him navigate adolescence was both a joy and a challenge. He wrestled with identity, friendships, and the usual teenage storms, but he did so with a kindness that made me proud. I often thought about how different things could have been if Daniel had been here, but those moments never turned bitter. Instead, they reminded me of how much strength a single parent can have, how love can fill gaps no matter the circumstances. My relationship with my partner deepened into something steady and supportive. He wasn't perfect, no one is, but he showed up with an open heart and a willingness to understand the past that shaped me. We learned how to communicate, to blend our lives carefully and respectfully. There were awkward dinners, misunderstandings, and occasional moments of jealousy, but we faced them together. And through it all, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. One afternoon, my son and I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the trees. He turned to me and said, "Mom, I know things weren't easy growing up, but I want you to know I'm really grateful for everything you did for me. You're my hero." My chest swelled with a mix of pride and humility. I wanted to tell him that he was my greatest teacher, that he had taught me more about love and courage than anyone else ever could. Instead, I just pulled him close and held him tight. There were still moments when I felt the old wounds flare, when memories of Daniel and the life we could have had crept in unexpectedly. But I no longer felt trapped by those feelings. They were part of my story, yes, but they didn't define me. I had rewritten the ending in a way that honored both the past and the present. And then, one day, out of the blue, I received a message from Daniel again. This time, it was different, not filled with longing or regret, but with a quiet hope. He wanted to meet my son, to build a bridge, if only a small one, across the years and distance that had separated us. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready for that. But deep down, I knew it was right. When they finally met, it was awkward and tender all at once. My son was cautious, but curious. Daniel was nervous, wanting to be part of our lives without overstepping. I watched from a distance as they talked, laughed, and slowly started to build a new kind of family, one based not on perfect timing or fairy tale endings, but on acceptance and love. In that moment, I realized something profound: families don't have to look like the ones in storybooks. They can be messy, complicated, imperfect. But if there's love and respect, if there's honesty and a willingness to try, they can be enough. More than enough. I've come to understand that my story isn't about losing what I thought I wanted. It's about finding what I truly need. It's about resilience, forgiveness, and the courage to keep loving, even when the path is uncertain. And as I look at the life we've built, at the laughter in our home, the bonds that have formed, the love that continues to grow, I know that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Not despite the hardships, but because of them. As the seasons changed, so did the dynamics of our family. The meetings between Daniel and my son became more frequent, and slowly, an uneasy but genuine bond started to form. It wasn't always easy. There were awkward silences, moments of misunderstanding, and the occasional clash of expectations. But beneath it all, there was a mutual respect growing, a desire to be part of each other's lives in a way that felt honest and kind. I watched my son navigate this new relationship with surprising grace. Sometimes he'd call me after seeing Daniel, excited to share a story or ask a question. Other times, he'd be quiet, processing feelings that only teenagers can fully understand. I tried to be patient, to hold space for whatever he needed, reminding him that it was okay to feel conflicted. After all, family isn't always simple. My partner stood by me through it all, his support unwavering. He never tried to replace Daniel or compete for attention. Instead, he carved out his own place in our family's story, a steady presence, a friend, a partner who loved both of us. I realized how lucky I was to have someone who understood the complexities and didn't shy away from them. One evening, as I tucked my son into bed, he looked up at me and said, "Mom, I think I'm starting to understand what family really means. It's not about perfect plans or who's there all the time. It's about who loves you and shows up, even when it's hard." His words hit me deeply. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace. The dream I'd once held so tightly to have a perfect family had transformed into something richer and more real. Life continued to unfold with its usual mix of joys and challenges. There were graduations, birthday parties, late night talks, and quiet moments of reflection. Through it all, I carried with me the lessons learned from love lost and found, from letting go and holding on. Sometimes, I think back to the day Daniel told me he didn't want kids anymore, and I realize how far we've come since then. That moment marked an end but also a beginning, a painful truth that set me on a path I never expected but one that ultimately led me to a fuller, deeper kind of happiness. I'm still learning, still growing, still embracing the unpredictability of life. And as I look toward the future, I do so with hope for more love, more connection, and more moments that remind me of the resilience of the human heart. Because in the end, that's what matters most.